Story 1. I am a firefighter and emergency medical technician. I make a little over $100,000 a year with overtime. My base salary is $75,000. I have 5 years of experience. Story 2. I am a compliance technical writer. It took a number of years of honing technical skills and specializing in compliance with system and organization controls and standards from the International Organization for Standardization to reach my current six-figure salary. Technical writers just starting out can earn $70,000 or $80,000. Story 3. I started at $60,000 right out of college as a software engineer in embedded systems. After about 15 years and 2 career pivots, I make about $140,000. I feel I could perhaps make more, but my job is relaxed, fulfilling, and 100% remote, so I do not care. Life is comfortable. Story 4. I no longer do, but I averaged around $90,000 a year between ages 22 and 27 because I lucked out and got a job at a restaurant where the tips were insane. Quintupling my income all at once was an interesting experience, and it turns out giving an impulsive 22-year-old that much money was a bad idea. I became addicted to drugs for most of my 20s. Restaurants have a huge party culture. Story 5. I am a physical education teacher earning $90,000. I am 32 years old and have been in the system for 6 years. I started at $48,000. Students attend school for 210 days instead of 180. We are a public school and have an excellent union. I earn $15,000 in annual bonuses, which I consistently attain. I feel very fortunate. Story 6. I work in games. I am 36 years old and I make $123,000 per year. I have been in the industry for 16 years to reach this point. I went 8 years without a single raise or cost of living adjustment while working at 3 studios in some of the most expensive cities in the United States, and then I nearly doubled my salary in the last 2 years at my current studio. I endured a lot to get here. I was in retail before entering the games industry, and I have been sexually harassed by managers and colleagues at multiple studios. I experienced doxing, death, bomb, and rape threats. At the first studio where I worked, bulletproof glass was installed because of the number of threats we received. I was sent heinous content by angry players, ranging from pornography to videos of dogs being shot. For a while, I was among the lowest paid and most experienced women in my field according to anonymous pay data collected when people submitted salaries. I am proud of where I am, but it has been absolutely grueling to get here and has left me with a number of deep emotional scars. Story 7. I work with children on the autism spectrum. I have a master's degree, which is approximately 6 years of education. Story 8. I am an electrical engineer at a utility company with 7 years of experience. Story 9. I make just over $80,000 as a software engineer. It took me about 5 years of steady experience, side projects, and constantly learning new technologies to get here. Honestly, it is more about persistence and skill building than anything else. It feels good to finally see the effort pay off. Story 10. It matters where you live. I live in an expensive city, so I am paid more. I make over $115,000, but the average rent is $2,500 for a 1-bedroom apartment. Story 11. I am a registered nurse working in an administrative role. Took me 7 years to get here. Base pay is $140,000 per year. I take home about $170,000 per year by working a few late days a week to focus on special projects. Story 12. I am a software engineer with 10 years of experience. I graduated at a very fortunate time in 2015 when jobs were plentiful. I gained a lot of experience and built a strong network, which has kept my career advancing. I cannot recommend pursuing computer science as an entry-level path right now, given the recent upheaval caused by artificial intelligence. I spent a solid year waking up worried I would be fired daily, and entry-level jobs are sparse now, regardless of how much of the technology turns out to be vaporware or real. Story 13. I am a computed tomography technologist with 4 years of experience. I have a Bachelor of Science. I earn $80,000 in one of the states with the lowest cost of living and work 3 12-hour shifts, which is convenient. Story 14. I am a systems engineer. I did not study this in school. but I worked long hours and advanced through the ranks for over a decade before earning that level of income. I will probably be laid off soon, and I would not recommend anyone enter this field at the moment because the trend is to shift everything offshore, which often leads to poor results. Story 15. Warehouse Manager. Base pay is only $55,000, but because of a lack of hiring support and having every possible project dropped in my lap, I managed to reach $90,000 with overtime last year. If you do not believe in yourself but others do, you can be taken advantage of and reach those earnings. Story 16. I made $100,000 by working a lot. I worked 80-hour weeks regularly, sometimes for 60 days in a row, and I almost always worked 20 days in a row before taking a day off, including weekends. Realistically, it was a $50,000 job. I just worked double shifts all the time. Was it worth it? Absolutely not. Taxes took most of it, my commute costs were high, and I had no life. I bought a few nice things, but nothing that was worth those hours. After returning to a 40-hour week, I regained my life, but I adapted more slowly to the lower income than I expected. Some expenses I took for granted turned out to be extravagant when I could no longer afford them. Story 17. I have recently stepped down due to mental health reasons. I was earning a little over $100,000 a year, including bonuses, as the executive chef of a family-owned restaurant with more than $3 million in annual revenue. I have been cooking professionally for 25 years and have been a chef for the last 14 years. Story 18. In the year 2000, my first job paid me about $90,000 per year. I was a system administrator at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I did not have a degree, but I was attending school to earn one and had just started applying for jobs to join the first technology boom. That was by far the worst pay I have had in my career. Salary only increased from there. My last job title was Site Reliability Engineer. I still did not need a degree. Warning: this job can be highly stressful. Story 19. I doubled my earnings and skills within a few years by job hopping early in my career. It is less frowned upon when you are young than when you are more senior. If you have the capacity and willingness to take risks, learn quickly, and adapt to change, you have little to lose by trying this. Just know when to stop. Story 20. I will make about $105,000 this year. I am a marine electronics technician on a ship. It took about 6 years of relevant military service to gain the experience and certifications for this job. I work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, plus paid time off. I will end up working 161 days total this year. Story 21. I am going to make approximately $100,000 as a truck driver for Walmart. I have been driving for 4 or 5 years. Story 22. Scenography manager with a salary of $145,000 and 2 bonuses totaling approximately $15,000. Story 23. She is a software engineer earning $120,000 per year. She is a 33-year-old female and has been at this pay level for several years. Story 24. I am a 911 dispatcher, earning just under $100,000 last year. I more than doubled my base salary with overtime. I am so fucking tired. Story 25. Corporate finance in London. Approximately £240,000 last year. 18 years of experience. Story 26. $250,000. Registered nurse on the West Coast. Completed an accelerated degree in 16 months. Works a lot of overtime. Story 27. My in-law is a 911 operator for the San Francisco Police Department. Starting pay is $110,000. After 4 years, it is $140,000. Search for San Francisco 911 Class 8238 to see for yourself. Story 28. Network engineer and architect. 15 years in my current position, and I have been doing general computer and information technology work since the late 1990s. Story 29. I'm earning 101,000 Australian dollars a year. I lucked out applying for a manager's job at a tire shop. They were desperate and saw my potential, even though I'm not a manager by trade. I went from 24 Australian dollars an hour at the National Automotive Parts Association to 45 Australian dollars an hour here. I have to do well here because I'll never see this kind of money again. I thank the universe regularly. In less than 12 months here, I've completely turned my financial life around. I earn every penny. I'm 42. Story 30. Pharmacist. $240,000. Education and qualifications. 4 years of undergraduate study, 4 years of pharmacy school, 1 year of residency, 4 years of professional experience, and 2 certifications. Story 31. Dentist, $170,000. 8 years of education, 7 years practicing. Income in my first 6 years, $90,000, $99,000, $115,000, $115,000, $135,000, $170,000. Cost of education, $480,000. Story 32. I entered project management. It took me 7 years to reach that position. I now have 15 years of experience as a project manager and am quite happy with the income, but I am getting tired of the job and its problems. I am not even sure where to move next. In the end, it is just a job. Story 33. I am a supervisor at a manufacturing plant. It took me 1 year to obtain the role and several raises over the next 3 years to reach the salary level. Story 34. Sales engineer with more than 20 years of experience in information technology, earning over $80,000 per year throughout that time. Story 35. Accounting. I reached over $80,000 after about 3 years, but this was in the early 2010s. Unfortunately, salaries seem to have stagnated for starting wages, and the dollar is worth a lot less these days. I bought a house for $130,000 back then. Story 36. I am a field service controls technician. I started as an industrial robot programmer in 2015. I worked in-house at one of the Detroit 3 automakers as a controls technician from 2020 through July 2025. It took me 5 years to reach that position. I earned over $100,000 in my first year at the original equipment manufacturer and $144,000 in my last full year there. I recently moved to Florida and accepted a pay cut because there is no manufacturing here. My base pay is $85,000, and I work in building automation, including heating, ventilation, and air conditioning and access control. I receive a company car, a fuel card, and a $1,500 per month expense card. With changes in taxes, I am making just a little less than I was in Detroit. I am not enjoying it despite a gross loss of approximately $60,000 per year. Story 37. I founded a company. I paid myself nothing for a decade. I hired employees but ran out of money. I liquidated my retirement accounts and eventually had to let employees go. I moved the company to remote work and tested a new sales pitch. The pitch succeeded, and now I earn more than $80,000 per year. Story 38. I work in information technology. It took me 10 years and moving to a tech hub to get the position. Story 39. I'm an imaging field service engineer. I repair medical imaging equipment, primarily computed tomography and magnetic resonance imaging systems. I have 16 years of experience. My base salary is $190,000 per year with a company car. With overtime and on-call pay, I earn $225,000 or more. I work in a medium to high cost of living area. During my shifts, I am primarily on call, and many days I do very little work and still get paid. The first 5 to 10 years involved many long, hard hours, but the job becomes easier with experience. Story 40. I went from accounts payable to senior accounting specialist to senior accountant. $45,000 to $65,000 to $83,000. I left my senior accountant role to work in taxes and am back down to $65,000, but it offers a better work-life balance. Story 41. I work in chemistry, quality assurance, and regulatory affairs. My base salary is $76,000, with total compensation of about $90,000. I spent 6 years working relentlessly, doing the work of 3 people and sacrificing much of my personal life to gain corporate acceptance and pay raises. It feels like 11 years if you include the grueling process of earning a degree in a hard science. Story 42. International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers electrician. Over $100,000 for a 40-hour work week, with unlimited additional earnings through overtime. 5-year apprenticeship. Story 43. I earn about 330,000 United States dollars. I am a marketing executive with 12 years of experience. Never in my dreams did I think marketing would get me here. I work from home in a moderate cost of living area. Story 44. In Germany, a typical systems engineer in locomotive engineering and manufacturing earns close to 80,000 euros per year, which is approximately 95,000 United States dollars per year. Story 45. I am a new graduate intensive care unit nurse in a low or medium cost of living area. I will start at $87,000 a year and will earn more than $90,000 in my second year. Story 46. Registered nurse for 2 years in a mid to low cost of living area. That was 10 years ago. Now well past 100. Super easy in the medical field. Story 47. I am a nuclear design engineer, but I did not start in this industry. I earned $80,000 as a senior design engineer at a diesel engine manufacturer about 10 years ago. Story 48. I am a union carpenter. After 4 years of apprenticeship, you make $85,000. I have been doing this for 20 years. Story 49. Search engine optimization for e-commerce. For years. Story 50. Executive producer by title. My role is primarily business development and maintaining strategic accounts. I have 10 years of directly relevant experience. Story 51. I work in contracts and procurement. This is my 10th year in the field. I have been with the same company, progressing from assistant to lead to manager, and now I am the succession plan for my boss's position when she retires next year. I got the job by pure luck. I applied to one job and was not called for an interview, but the company was hiring for another position and already had my information on file, so human resources called me and asked if I would be interested. It paid 40% more than I was making at the time, so I accepted. 6 years in, I went back to school for a master's degree, which helped me move into management from an individual contributor role. Story 52. Supplier quality engineer. Salary $128,000. I did not attend college. I became interested in manufacturing and quality control. It took about 20 years after I entered quality assurance to reach this role. Story 53. I am a non-destructive testing and rope access technician. Basically, I am an ultrasound technician suspended from a climbing rope. I average about 130,000 Canadian dollars per year, with 2 to 3 months off annually but significant overtime during other parts of the year. I have been on this path for 7 years. Story 54. Facility director for a public school district. Salary $93,000. No college degree. I oversee a staff of more than 60 custodians, maintenance workers, and groundskeepers for day-to-day operations across multiple campuses and 3 shifts. I started in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, plumbing, and construction before taking a civil service test and moving into this role. I am eligible for retirement before age 60 with a pension. It gets a little stressful at times. Story 55. $105,000 plus bonus. Retail store manager for a corporate wireless company. More than 5 years of experience. Story 56. A city parks worker earning $80,000. They started as a temporary summer worker and became full-time after 2 seasons. Story 57. I made over $100,000 as a mechanic, but it is a young man's sport. I went back to school, and 8 years later I now earn $120,000. Story 58. Summary. I am at $95,000 now. I am 31 and work an administrative office job at a college. It took about 7 years after getting my bachelor's degree to reach $80,000. I live in New York City, so wages may be higher than counterparts elsewhere for this line of work. From ages 18 to 21, I made minimum wage working part-time during school, between $7.25 and $8 per hour. My first full-time job paid $33,000 when I was 22 at a small nonprofit. When I realized I would not advance there, I left for a $40,000 opportunity at a private school at age 23. 2 years later, I accepted a $60,000 full-time position in a college office at age 25, almost 26, in late 2019. That job had a pay scale and built-in cost of living adjustments of 2 to 3% annually. In 2022, I was recruited by a startup offering $80,000, and I accepted for the $20,000 bump. It was sketchy, with no real benefits, so I began job hunting again. When I asked my former supervisor to be a reference, she found a posting at my former job and said she would start it at least $80,000. My previous experience also qualified me for a higher position, from assistant to associate. I acknowledge how absolutely lucky I was that my former supervisor could do this for me. From 2022 to 2025, I stayed there, increasing annually from the $82,000 starting offer. There were union contract negotiations in the background, so in addition to the 2 to 3% increases, there was a retroactive adjustment to the newly signed contract's pay scale. This summer, I moved from $88,000 to $95,000 to adjust for that. I am not making the mistake of leaving again. Story 59. I am Associate General Counsel for a small bank. I started this role in July about 2 months ago, with a salary of $115,000. I completed 3 years of law school and practiced as an attorney in private practice for 3 years. I then took a break from practicing law to work in wealth advisory for my current employer before moving into this position. Story 60. Engineering project controls took probably 3 to 4 years after graduating. I earn substantially more now, as I have broadened my skill set to cover the 3 main subdisciplines. Story 61. I am a city planner in California and I earn $84,000 per year. This is my first job after college and I am doing well. Story 62. I am a teamster at a rock quarry and operate haul trucks and water trucks. At this quarry, you start at the top pay rate because there is only one pay scale. I began earning $160,000 immediately. Story 63. I am a government attorney. I started earning 6 figures after about 9 years. After I left prosecution, things improved every year. I should have left years earlier. Now I am a managing attorney with a 4-day workweek and I work fully remotely. I get paid to drive to court if I have to cover for someone. My wife went into private practice quickly, so I ended up with the insurance and pension. Between our salaries, I finally do not worry about money as much. Unfortunately, both our mothers did not plan for retirement and are now relying on us. If only someone could provide child care to free up several $1,000s per year. Story 64. I am a 28-year-old male who reviews construction blueprints for a municipality. I started plumbing, concrete work, framing, and welding at ages 14 to 18 before I went to college. I graduated from college and worked odd jobs until I was 24, when I obtained the position. Story 65. Inventory management. I have worked in the warehouse for 15 years. I started at the bottom and have been promoted several times. This is not where I expected to be after attending art school and earning a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Life Drawing. Laughing out loud. Story 66. I am a heavy equipment operator in the union in Washington, earning $130,000 per year without overtime. It has taken me 8 years in the union, but I work with kids who earn as much as I do. Story 67. A food safety director makes $82,000 plus bonuses, for a total of approximately $84,000 to $86,000 depending on how the season goes for the owner. Took me 8 years. I started when I was 19 and I am now 27. Story 68. I reached a salary of $80,000 at around 8 years of experience. I am now at about $120,000 with 10 years of experience. My path is not typical, and architecture is not a lucrative career on average. Story 69. I have worked in information technology for 25 years and earn approximately $110,000 per year. I have done support for a large cell phone provider and their data devices. I have been in charge of help desks. I was a data center technician. I am now a systems administrator for a Fortune 500 company. I think of it as failing upwards. I bounced around because the industry is always changing and jobs are never guaranteed from week to week. Information technology is often seen as a cost to the company. If everything works perfectly, management asks, what do we even pay you for? If systems are constantly failing, they ask the same question. If I had specialized in a specific field such as security, networking, storage, or databases and so on, I would be earning 2 to 3 times more than I am now. But I would have had to study very hard and spend much less time playing World of Warcraft. Story 70. Teacher, it took me 12 years to reach 80, but our pay scale has a couple of nice bumps after that, and now I am over 100. Story 71. I work in energy operations at 24 years old in the Midwest. This is my first job out of college, earning about $90,000 per year. Story 72. Senior automation specialist in the energy sector. $110,000 base salary with a 15 to 20% bonus. 2-year degree. More than 15 years of experience. I was recently offered a supervisory position at a significantly higher salary but declined. I ensure machines operate reliably and maintain professional standards when working with others. Story 73. $3 million per year. I am a supersized penis model. I was hired at 18. Story 74. I am a nurse anesthetist working as an independent contractor under Form 1099 and locum tenens contracts. Working approximately 36 to 40 hours per week. I earn approximately $450,000 per year. I love my job. Story 75. I make $103,000 a year as an American Sign Language interpreter. This is from 2 jobs combined, averaging 41 hours per week. Story 76. Not me, but I know an information technology technician who works for a United States state agency. He makes nearly $90,000 per year and knows nothing about computers. He is 49 years old and essentially set until retirement. It is not a high cost of living area. He was hired by a friend, skated through a 1-year probationary period, and is now impossible to remove. His pay slowly increased year after year and will soon cap at around $90,000. He has memorized steps and procedures that have become a ritual to him. Often this will ultimately fix the problem, but without any understanding of why. His routine makes no sense to anyone who knows what they are doing, but usually there is a step that has the effect of doing what one would do to actually fix the problem, so it appears his ritual is the solution. A basic example is Adobe Reader will not open. The actual issue is that Acrobat repeatedly leaves processes running and never properly terminates them. So multiple Acrobat.exe processes run with no user interface displayed. You can kill the processes in PowerShell by running getProcess4. Acrobat and piping to stop process, and the program will work. Instead, this technician will uninstall and reinstall, then apply a lengthy patch, fixing the problem in about 25 minutes because the uninstaller kills the zombie processes. Rebooting would resolve the problem more quickly. It is maddening. Story 77. I am a certified anesthesiologist assistant. I made $500,000 last year with a lot of overtime and many on-call shifts. But I was set to make $380,000 as a traveler based on 40 hours per week. Typical salary is around or above $200,000 for W-2 employees. I went pre-med intending to become a doctor, but instead I entered an anesthesiologist assistant program to perform everything the anesthesiologist does while working under one. I completed a 2-year program that was extremely difficult, but it is rigorous for a reason, and I am enjoying life and administering anesthesia most days of the year. Story 78. I barely graduated high school and just managed to graduate college and university. I was not a natural student at all, and school was an uphill battle for me. I went into restaurants and then moved into several office jobs that I quickly left. I did not enjoy restaurants or those phony office jobs. I discovered information technology and managed service providers, which I enjoyed more than restaurants, and I kept pivoting until I found cybersecurity. I worked in several cybersecurity roles before moving into cybersecurity sales. My base salary is $70,000 and I love it. With bonuses and commissions, my total is about $220,000. Most importantly, I finally enjoy the culture. Story 79. I am 24 years old and work as an offshore oil rig hand. I work 150 to 200 days per year for a contractor, depending on the year. I have been in the workforce for 10 years. I started working in kitchens and entered the oil field less than 2 years ago. Story 80. I sell used cars. I reached $80,000 in about 1998 after being in the business for 2.5 years, and it has steadily increased since then. Story 81. I am a mechanical engineer. I graduated in 1997 earning $42,000 and reached $80,000 in 2004. A span of 7 years. That was a very different time. Story 82. I went to college and then to law school and earned considerably more than that. College took about 4 years and law school took 3 years. 7 years in total. It was well worth it. Story 83. I am an electrician with 5 years of apprenticeship and 19 years of experience. I now work as a maintenance electrician at an oil refinery, earning more than $150,000. Story 84. I worked as a software developer earning $32,000 per year. I left that job, founded a company, and after 3 years of working 18 hours a day, I assembled a team. Now my company operates mostly on its own, and I earn between $100,000 and $130,000 per year. Story 85. I am a nurse, officially on a per diem basis but working full-time. I work a couple of overtime shifts a month and earn about $150,000 before taxes. I started making this much 1 year into my career. That is well above $80,000. Story 86. I am 27 years old and currently make $600,000 annually. I started at around $200,000 after graduating as a software engineer. I started my own software as a service company, and I have a team of 20 and a few recurring clients. I have only been making this much on an annualized basis for the last 12 months or so let us see how long it lasts. Prior to that, I was making around $280,000 in my day job. Story 87. I am a doctor of physical therapy and landed a government job on a military base. I surpassed the $90,000 mark years ago, and between the benefits, an additional $30,000, and lower living expenses after moving to a rural area, it has been somewhat worthwhile. Considering my education and training, it took more than 10 years to reach this point. Story 88. I am a senior engineering technologist. I make about $85,000 a year. I have been told I earn somewhat more than most people in my position because I perform the work of a licensed engineer without the professional stamp. I also supervise the engineering technologists, engineers in training, and the drafter below me. It took about 8 years of experience to get here. I started at $43,000 a year. Story 89. Satellite communications. I earned $80,000 in my first job after the Army. Story 90. I make around $92,000 a year as a lead histology technician. I started 9 years ago making $11.30 an hour as an apprentice. Now I am around $48 per hour, but to be honest, it does not feel like enough here in the Pacific Northwest. Story 91. I've never made that much. Honestly, I had a low point. I do not even know how I survived the last 2 years. It is sad how money can cause stress, pain, and even death. Those on top never want people to thrive. Feels awful to be stuck and out of luck, and it is so hard to be happy. If Nas ruled the world. Story 92. I lucked into it, really. I went to school for classics and linguistics, with some dalliances in computer science and very early natural language processing. After I got a second Master of Arts, I was bored and did not know what to do. I got a job teaching, which I hated. One day I dropped everything, moved to the big city, and lucked into a very junior job in financial technology years before the word fintech existed. I think I started around $70,000, which I thought was a lot of money back then. The interviewers liked me for some unknown reason. I worked very hard for the first about 10 years. Eventually, I worked my way up to an officer and manager position at a large financial services company where even the lowest base pay for a new graduate is now well above $80,000. Here I am 20 years later. It is hard work, the hours are long, and I work with a bunch of sociopaths, but it pays relatively well. Story 93. Information Technology Project Manager. Previously a senior manager, age 39, earning $140,000. I wasted the first 6 years of my career until I decided to focus. I reached a $90,000 salary at age 29 and continued progressing after that. I could move to a larger city and likely reach around $200,000 in consulting, but I am not ready for that. Story 94. Senior engineer specializing in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning and mechanical systems with 25 years of experience. Works from home, $120,000 per year. Could earn more but is winding down toward retirement. Story 95. I am a helicopter pilot. It took about 8 years to reach the point where I can charge whatever I want per hour or per day. Story 96. I am an oil refinery process operator and cannot say for which company, but the pay listed in our job description is $85,000. With overtime, it has not been less than $100,000 in the last 5 years. I have been here for nearly 12 years. It took about 4 years from the date of hire to reach top pay in this position. We only receive the yearly raise written into our contract, which is essentially a cost of living adjustment. I can move into different positions for more money, but everyone in the same position receives the same pay under the union contract. Story 97. I earn roughly that amount, converted from euros, and have turned my hobby into my profession. I originally trained in automotive work at the Department of Defense dependent schools and was actually very good at it, although my back never tolerated it after I broke it when I was 12. In Germany, my automotive training was never recognized, so I spent years in temporary work doing welding and other metal work. Eventually, I put money I did not really have into my own hands and got certified in C++ in the hopes it would be enough to get my foot in the door to information technology. Work. That worked, and for the last 17 years I have worked in system administration and programming, with 12 of those years providing hands-on technical support in data centers and eventually moving into financial technology. I have trained information technology apprentices and still keep in contact with a few of my former trainees. It is much harder to get in without official training, but in my case it was well worth it. I have declined jobs that would have paid more than I make now in team leadership because, while I am not against a leadership position, I want to stay hands-on. Story 98. I am a production supervisor at a glue factory. I am 32 and started at the company as a temporary employee when I was 22. Story 99. I record drums for bands in an underground bunker studio. It took me about 20 years of never giving up. Every other musician I grew up with quit and got normal jobs. Story 100. I am a national account manager for a consumer electronics distributor. It took me about 3 to 4 years to work my way up to sales. I am now averaging about $130,000. I have been in sales for about 11 years. In my best year, I made $240,000 from extra commissions. Those were good times. Story 101. A $95,000 salary as a supervisor in a sawmill is actually a pay cut of $10,000 a year. The last year I was paid hourly, I made $105,000 because I earned $30,000 in overtime. Now I work 40 hours instead of 60 hours per week. Losing $10,000 to gain 20 hours of my life back every week was well worth it. Story 102. In healthcare here, the salary is $120,000 after about 10 years in the field. It took me about 2 years in my program after I finished all my prerequisites at local community colleges. Story 103. Aerospace engineer. I worked at Boeing for 10 years. Now I can go almost anywhere and ask for a minimum of $100,000. Story 104. I work overnight security on 12-hour shifts. I do 30 to 90 minutes of work on average. The rest of the time I watch YouTube and Netflix. With overtime, I made $100,000 last year. Story 105. I am a lead user experience designer at a large technology company. I earn $680,000 per year. I have been in this field for 10 years. I was fortunate. Story 106. On track for $110,000 this year. I made $108,000 a few years ago. Last year I made $65,000, but I was off 5 months due to a broken arm. Truck driver for Safeway in Northern California. Story 107. 1.35 million British pounds. Physical commodities trader. I spent 4 years as an analyst before becoming a trader after completing a master's degree. I attribute my success largely to luck and timing. I have been trading for 9 years. As an analyst, I was earning 40,000 British pounds. I then received a promotion and later changed companies. Story 108. New construction foreman plumber. $80,000. 8 years in the trade. Story 109. I design controls for industrial fired equipment. Nearly 20 years of experience have led me to this point, and I earned $85,000 my very first year. Story 110. I earn $120,000, including overtime as a specialized technician. I have been in the field for 16 years and passed the $80,000 mark 4 years ago. I am not revealing my job because there are maybe a dozen people in my state who do it, and I do not want to be doxxed. Story 111. I am a hairdresser in a high-end salon. I work 3 days there and provide freelance haircuts on the other days. Story 112. I earn $185,000. I am an animation director at a commercial studio. My starting salary 6 years ago was $145,000. I have 12 years total in the industry. I also work as a teacher and do freelance work on the side, which brings in an additional $15,000 to $30,000. When I graduated from school, I was making a good living as a freelancer within 2 years. I had a lot of lucky breaks, lived within my means, and worked very hard to build a reputation for myself, but it would be much harder to start from scratch now. Since the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, a lot about the industry has changed. Story 113. Senior Information Technology Manager. Base pay is $156,000, with about $50,000 in bonus and stock options. Total compensation is around $200,000. I still work from home. I have been with the same Fortune 50 company since I graduated with a computer science degree 14 years ago. I started at $61,000 out of college, have been promoted 3 times, and now manage the team I began on. I am 37 years old. Story 114. I have been making 90 or more since the age of 18 in 2010. I worked in the oil fields of Alaska for 11 years, then got a job in logistics at age 30. I feel blessed and motivated. I had 2 children by the age of 18, and abandoning them or not giving them the best was not an option for me. Story 115. Medic. 7 years of university, 5 years of working and postgraduate training, 1 fellowship and 2 master's degrees. I decided that overachieving was not making me happy around the time of the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, and I am now just going with the flow, earning much less money but being far happier. Story 116. I am a full professor in the humanities. It took me about 10 years after completing my doctorate to reach that point. This varies greatly by academic field, university, and country. Some science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields begin at assistant professor salaries that are much higher than what I earn now. Conversely, some full professors in the humanities in other countries earn much less than I do, even with more years of experience. Story 117. I am an engineer earning $180,000 per year. I have been at it for more than 30 years. I started at $25,000 per year in 1993, which was low. I surpassed $100,000 in my mid-40s. Story 118. Development and operations at a large insurance company. 21 years of experience. Salary surpassed $80,000 5 years ago. Story 119. I became a sales manager earning $115,000 in less than 5 years after returning to sales. I started in a regular store with a typical salary of around $40,000. I was looking for sales consultant jobs and hit the jackpot when a position opened that matched the expertise of my sales degree. Bear with me. I am not American, so I do not know the exact term for my education. It is a basic qualification, and they were looking for a candidate who was the right personality fit. Story 120. I am a surgical critical care fellow earning $80,000. I went to medical school, completed residency, and am working 60 to 70 hours per week in the southeastern United States of America. Story 121. In a past role, I trained hospital administrators and oversaw hospital accreditation processes. It was one massive headache after another and felt like herding cats to get facilities over the finish line. Before that, I did the same work for local public health agencies. Started off great and was rewarding. What was not fulfilling was working under some inept supervisors. Few things were worse than working for people who were never wrong and who invented ways to shift blame onto others, which was almost always me. Anyway, the position paid about $90,000 with solid benefits, and I still walked away. I have a master's degree and nearly a decade of relevant experience. Story 122. In lobbying, it took 5 years to earn a good income, but the sky is truly the limit for what I could earn in this field. Story 123. $90,000 or more, depending on whether I want to. I drive a forklift at a factory that makes soda cans. I am 30 and have been here for about a year and a half. Not the most exciting job, but I only work half the year, so I am content. Story 124. I am a senior information technology consultant. I began working in information technology in 1997 and started earning more than $80,000 a year around 2019. It took hard work and continuous study, including obtaining certifications, which I still pursue. Story 125. Non-destructive testing and quality assurance safety in shipyards takes about 20 years to reach 80% or higher. Story 126. Make a base salary of $70,000 from a work-from-home job. Then work part-time for my previous employer doing garden maintenance, bringing my total to about $80,000. Story 127. My starting pay where I work was just over $100,000 for driving an underground dump truck. I am well past that amount now. Story 128. I make just over $80,000 as a commercial driver's license food service delivery driver and work hardly any overtime. With 20 years experience, someone just starting could make the same or more by working overtime. Story 129. My wife is a teacher. She has 10 years of experience, 8 with her district. She holds a master's degree and completes yearly continuing education to advance on the pay scale for years of service and additional classes. She may be earning between $85,000 and $90,000, though I know it is at least $80,000. Story 130. $200,000. The husband is a director of finance in the video game industry. He invests heavily in Bitcoin and trades in the stock market. Story 131. $98,000 per year. Information Technology Systems Administrator and Global Architect with 10 years of combined informal and formal experience, including about 7 years in formal roles. I started at an electronics recycling center and then worked at a mobile repair shop, where I learned hardware skills and customer support while studying enterprise technology. On the side, I obtained a contract help desk position during coronavirus disease 2019 and continued changing jobs until I developed the skills and experience to manage a small business that required on-site information technology support. My salary increased from $75,000 to $98,000 when I became the lead and sole information technology staff member. Story 132. Civil engineering inspector, $85,000 to $90,000 with minimal overtime, 7 years experience, no degree but extensive employer-sponsored on-the-job training. Story 133. Facilities coordinator. I moved into the role after 10 years in hospitality. I started at $75,000. 2 years later, I am at $99,000. Transferable interpersonal skills are essential. Securing a recruiter through a company such as Coldwell Banker Richard Ellis, Jones Lang LaSalle, Savills, or similar firms is key. Be a positive presence and let them guide you. The downside is that it is a thankless background role. Story 134. I am a local truck driver in the Midwest. I average about $85,000 per year. I have been trucking for about 10 years, 6 of which have been with my current company. Story 135. I became an electrical engineer immediately after college. Story 136. Drop berry technician. I started at 17 as a helper. At 20, I became a contractor. Story 137. I retired from the Marines after just over 25 years. Between my pension and Veterans Affairs benefits, I make just over $90,000 a year. I also have investment returns of about $50,000 a year, which I reinvest. I do some consulting and contract work for 3 or 4 months total each year, earning between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. I am 47. Story 138. I am a registered nurse. I make around $85,000 per year when I include overtime and similar pay. I struggled in the information technology field for a decade after my first undergraduate degree in mathematics, physics, and astronomy. That was a career I had no passion for. So I returned to school and completed an accelerated Bachelor of Science in nursing program that took 1 year. I have now been practicing in a trauma unit for about 1.5 years, and I absolutely love my job. It is certainly not a career for everyone, and it requires being intentional about self-care, but it is infinitely rewarding. The career also encourages diversifying practice so you can regularly change things up and learn new skills whenever you become too comfortable or bored. Story 139. I am a software engineer earning just over $100,000. It took me about 4 years after college to reach this. My first job paid about $65,000, but I continued learning, changing jobs, and negotiating. The biggest jump came from not being afraid to ask for more. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.